Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Limitless Lives on a Friday, a fabulous Friday. Super excited today. I have an awesome guest. This woman is one of the foremost trainers in mindfulness in corporate America. And without further ado, I'm just going to bring her in. It's Pema Sherpa, um, Pema Solutions, the owner of Pema Solutions. She's a mindfulness teacher and also a researcher as well, which is always fun for us to kind of dive in and pull apart different things. So welcome.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much for having me here.
My absolute and utter pleasure. And thank you so much for carving out the time to join us. Coming to you're coming to us from New York City. I'm actually in Denver. This is what I love about the virtual world. We can be thousands of miles apart, but we can still connect. And I love that. I think that's so cool.
Absolutely. It's a great blessing of today's time.
Without a doubt. So just a little quick little background. I am, I came to mental skills and honestly mindfulness training through the world of and through the lens of athletics and sports. I was in baseball where I really started to learn about the power of meditation and mindfulness practice. You and I were just talking backstage about your experience with sport, and your response was, "I don't watch any sports at all. I don't care about sports. I don't know it." So it's really interesting. So I'm curious about kind of like your journey into this world of mindfulness and kind of how you got here.
Yeah, absolutely. I do care about sports, but I don't watch them. Someday, maybe my husband will be able to convince me. He hasn't done good enough job just yet. Um, but my experience with mindfulness really comes from the fact that I was actually born and raised in Nepal.
Okay.
I grew up in a family where everyone practiced mindfulness from a Buddhist perspective, and so growing up, it was just part of the tradition, part of the fiber of how I was raised. And that's exactly how I thought of it. I was doing what I had to do as a good daughter, but I think it was when I came to America at 18 to attend college that I realized that being away from family at such a young age, coming to a completely different culture, I barely spoke English. So it was a big culture shock. But mindfulness helped me stay grounded and maintain a sense of well being in the face of, one can imagine the loneliness, the culture shock, the kind of changes that I was going through, but then also gave me that academic edge to be able
Hmm.
to learn English while attending college in America. And that sort of catalyzed my academic curiosity around mindfulness, where for the first time I took on this practice as my own versus something that I'm expected to do in my family because my parents are doing it, because I'm told to do it, and that's what good girls do.
So it's interesting. I'm curious about like as you're going through this change, and here you are, you're going from Nepal to where were you at the United States? At Harvard, is that correct?
Yes, I went to Harvard for grad school, but before that, I was in upstate New York. I went to Hartwick College in the middle of snow, and which intensified my experience of culture shock. So yeah, that's where I ended up, New York and then Massachusetts.
Yeah, so Hartwick's up by like kind of like the Finger Lakes and stuff. So lots of snow, lots of very cold, short windows of sunlight during the winter.
Yes.
With that, I did my master's degree at Ithaca College, so I'm very familiar with that area. And just so you know, as soon as I finished my year of coursework at Ithaca, I moved to Florida. I was out. I needed the sun. I gotta get out of here.
I hear you. I graduated from college. I was a double major. I graduated in 2.5 years. That's how intense Oneonta, the town that my school was in. So it's inspired me to do better.
so so here you are, you're in this little town in upstate New York. Snow, it's one of the like the countryside up there is beautiful, it's stunning, but like in the winter it feels, the word I'm going to use is bleak. It's
Mhm.
dark, it's tough, and it definitely wears you there. The seasonal affective disorder is real up there.
Oh yeah.
um and you turn to mindfulness and your own mindfulness practice to help you deal with that. I'm curious, because you grew up with it and it was just part of your foundation of your culture. I'm wondering, did you, as you did that, did did that allow you to kind of reconnect back home and kind of, I'm curious about why you feel like it helped you so much during that period.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the greatest thing of traditions and lived practice of mindfulness is there is a certain level of ritual and discipline. So even though I was doing it because I was told to and I was taught to, I did have a discipline and a consistent routine that I could easily replicate when I came to America, and it actually helped me feel a sense of normalcy. So the practice was there. And a quick thing that I
Mm,
noticed in college, being in a place like that, a lot of my peers around me were struggling with mental health struggles, as people do with the transition and being in a place like that. And I found a level of stability in myself. And that was, I noticed that it was different because I had all the reasons to not feel very well, be sad, be lonely, and that's where I noticed, okay, this is the practice that is different than what others are doing, and it is keeping me grounded. And in moments when I found myself in school where I barely could understand what the professor was saying because they were speaking English and speaking fast, I could find in myself my own mindful practices of breathing or trying to be curious, helping me be okay with that uncertainty in that moment rather than freaking out and being overwhelmed. And I don't know if that answers
mm.
the question, but that was my insight into this. There's something here.
Yeah, that's amazing because one of the things that jumped out at me when I started training to be able to teach mindfulness, I trained at the University of Miami with Dr. Mishi Jha, the author of Peak Mind, and I learned the thing that jumped out at me when, as a neophyte practitioner and kind of not understanding what meditation and mindfulness practice really is, you went in like, oh, this is like something that can really help us like relax, right?
Hmm.
Or whatever. But the whole practice, what I discerned, and please direct me if I'm a little bit off on this, but the power of noticing and the glorious power of being able to notice, because within noticing there is a lack of judgment, it's more just curiosity. And so one of the our foundation from Limitless Minds obviously is the neutral mindset, and
Hmm.
neutrality is grounded in dealing with what's in front of us, what's so, without the judgment or the grading of it. And so I'm that phrase of, you started to notice how it actually helped you manage what you were dealing with, and how it helped you kind of separate the emotions from the execution of what was necessary to be successful is kind of really amazing. Did you, I mean, as you studied and were taught mindfulness, and now that you've researched it, I mean, does that resonate, the power of noticing? Is that something that really jumps out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you said it really poignantly. This reputation that mindfulness has of feeling relaxed, and there's a lot of productive benefits in just being relaxed, but it's very dynamic. It's participating in the world as we go. It's not this
Hmm.
um, reserved and distant way of being where you are numb. It's not. It's actually, you feel so much more, but you're better equipped to feel and execute on the different stimuli that's coming your way. So mindfulness, I think, gets, in a way, it's great because people think, oh, I need to calm down, hence mindfulness practices, meditation, but it actually allows you to be very dynamic and participate with the world as it goes versus being separate from it.
Yeah, that's so great, because I think a lot of people, when you hear the word, yeah, and I'm curious about what you hear in terms of the myths of, because I'm sure you deal with it a lot. You're going into corporate settings and teaching this, and I'm sure there's probably pushback. Am I correct in that statement, that there's people that are really resistant to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so amazing that at this point in time, we have such concrete data around mindfulness that we have this bridge, a language that everybody can understand, the brain, the physical changes, we can get behind it. But people still would have this pushback that, no, I need that edge in order to perform. I need that edge in order to live my life, or I need that suffering because when it's gone for a little bit, it feels so good. And those are in many ways of having sort of lower standard for what we are capable of. We don't need to be stressed in order to perform, or we don't need to have suffering in order to feel contentment. We could have it for longer time. It could be more sustainable. I think those are a few of the pushbacks I see. But again, the language of science really speaks to people, and the data is very helpful.
Yeah, it's really interesting when we just a little bit of the history of mindfulness in baseball with the career that I had. So the team that I brought it to most was the Chicago Cubs. This was an organization that bought in to the mental skill side fully. We had probably had the most robust staff in all of Major League Baseball at the time. We had 9 practitioners of the mental health side of things. 5 were mental skills trainers, and then 4 were actually, or sorry, 5 were mental health practitioners, and 4 were mental skills trainers. Once we found out about the what's the word I'm looking for, competitive advantage, which I don't think
Mm-hmm.
many people think about when they think about mindfulness, but you just
Mm-hmm.
kind of mentioned it. It's this thing that allows you to have heightened sentences. Think about that in terms of, and I'm interested to see how that plays out in the corporate space and how that helps out. But within the sports world, a batter has 0.015 seconds to decide whether or not he's going to swing the bat or not. That's like, and in the last 15 feet of any pitch, they're blind. They can't even see it. So it's all prediction. But if I have heightened senses, that means my predictive ability is going to be heightened as well. And I'm going to be able to react a lot quicker. The other thing
Mm-hmm.
that we learned is that it allows us to stay focused longer under stress, which was really, really eye opening for us. And so once we brought it and we showed the science and we explained all that stuff, we were able to get 81% of the 350 players that were in our organization, 81% of them meditating 3 times a week. That's
Wow.
self-reported by them. So it was a really awesome thing, and it was all these young players that we now see on the stage of the Chicago in Wrigley Field that are absolutely. This was not only us, the mental skill staff, but it was also the front office and the management at the time that were working together, and it was a really wild, awesome ride for us. It helped us win the World Series. So,
Wow.
but from the corporate space, what are you seeing as the kind of the results of your work within companies, and when you go and you help train and things of that nature? How does it enhance their abilities to perform?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you really think about performance or anything in life, the way we connect with people, the way we perform on a specific task, or the way we enjoy ourselves, at the end of the day, we are using this brain of ours. So when we have better access to it, in a lot of ways, we have spent our entire life being externally focused. So our own minds, it's a huge mystery to us, right? A lot of times somebody wakes up with a good mood and you feel good, but you don't know how to replicate it the next day. Or you have
Hmm.
this moment of absolute inspiration, or you're kind and you are understanding and you are a good listener, but you don't know how to replicate that. And that is the repercussion of our culture that only focuses outwards. So if we need any answer, we Google, we read, we ask others, but rarely do we ever calm down and just try to get the answer for ourselves, or take time to understand this mechanism. That's our brain that's pretty much running the show. So with mindfulness practices, it's really giving people the appreciation for the fact that this mechanism is very important. It is the ruler of everything: performance, relationships, happiness, health. all of it. And then from that appreciation, looking at mindfulness from the perspective of really understanding your mind and having the tools to access it so that impacts things like leadership, the way you communicate, the way you micromanage
Mm,
conversation. That's a huge one for a lot of leaders I've seen where they need to micromanage every conversation. And it's not something, oh, he's a bad leader, he's a good leader. It's not so much that. We all have that tendency to micromanage others, micromanage ourselves, micromanage our breath. That's just how we operate. But being able to let go of that driver's seat, being on the driver's seat and relaxing a little, you get so much out of your communications, and that makes you such a great leader. And another big one is,
mm.
we know, you know, in the sports, we know this in businesses, in terms of actual big businesses or people's individual careers, it's how long you can stay in the game that will determine how many ups and downs you have the opportunity to experience. So if you can sustain yourself in a stressful job, in a stressful career for extended period of time, most probably in somewhat inevitable ways, you will grow, you will succeed. So, how do you maintain that resilience, that curiosity, that desire to continue on while not hurting your health completely and your mental well being completely? If you can stay the game, then chances are you're going to get better and you are going to see that success. So those ingredients
Mm.
really contribute to performance enhancements, creativity, leadership in corporate settings, is what I'm seeing.
So one of the concepts we have at Limitless Minds is called adversity tolerance, and the ability to manage adversity effectively over time. Do you feel like, and I guess the part of that that I always use, there's a great proverb: behind this mountain is another mountain, right? And so it's kind of the, things don't get easier, we just get better. Does it kind of relate to that, where, hey, now I'm being able to manage this more effectively, more with kind of being able to step outside of it and not have it be the driver. We always talk about the emotions being the driver sometimes of actions. And oftentimes, when emotions are the drivers of actions, we're going to go down the wrong roads.
Yes.
Um, so having that ability to step outside of our emotions, experience them, understand them, feel them, notice them, but then also step outside of them to make the best right next step. Is
Mhm.
that kind of what you're saying there? That really helps out with that kind of aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, there's both that element of your nervous system being better equipped to deal with those
Mm,
emotions and be able to access your executive brain. But also, another aspect is the perspective, right? The qualitative understanding of life that, like you said, there's another mountain. It's like life is a mountain we climb, but there is no peak. If we keep climbing until we die. And same with my mindfulness practices. Oh, I've been practicing for 5 years, 10 years. You practice until you can. So that kind of looking at life from a long game, that kind of perspective also, combined with your nervous system actually operating more optimally, is where we see the real results.
why do you think that people don't do that? Why do you think that people don't go to the long game, and they kind of they boom, it's always just short term type stuff, and they just kind of like just solve versus experience. Why do you think that happens?
I think I'm sure there's so many reasoning. My understanding, or the way I try to understand the mind, is the way we have evolved, right? So if you look at from an evolutionary perspective, a lot of our ancestors' only job was to survive and procreate and elongate, extend their human race. So some of the things that helped them survive was constantly look at the next thing, the next meal, the next mate, and
Mm,
also always scanning out for danger and being very short term thinking. And that helped them. And we can think of those ancestors who were the most paranoid, who were the most, in some ways, selfish and the most short sighted in terms of protecting themselves, were the ones who survived. And we
huh,
are the descendants of those. So we have those tendencies in us in a very primitive way. So our brains are so sophisticated and amazing, but we also have that very primitive brain. And the limbic system is the oldest part of our brain, which means it's the most intact, it's the most dominant. And that's that reptilian or primitive brain that we have. And even today, we get triggered. A bad email feels like a threat
Hmm.
to survival. A tiger is going to come and attack us. But because we are humans and not some of the other animals who don't have that capacity, we have the capacity to think and assess and think, no, it's not a tiger leaping out at me. It's a difficult email. I can deal with it. So we have the opportunity to slow down and process the situation in a better way. But to answer your question of why we are so short-sighted, and it's because our brain has been designed to think about now, how can I comfort myself? How can I numb myself? The quick dopamine hit or the quick sugar high, that's also part of us, but also we have another part which is more long thinking and really doing what's best for us on a longer run. And we have access to both, and it's the choice. One, it's the choice. Two, it's the education and skill set.
Yeah, and it sounds like what I'm hearing from you is that the mindfulness practice can really help us um, override the amygdala hijacking and the limbic system in its own right, and so it can help us. We're still going to have those moments, like, if I get the text, "Hey, we need to talk." Right? Like, right? Like, I don't know about the listener, but everybody gets that text, they're just like, oh, what happened? Right? Like that
Yeah.
text like takes you into like, whoa, what's going on? Um, right. But so you're gonna have those emotions, but now being able to again experience, but then move past them and not
Hmm.
let them dictate the next steps is really powerful. Um, you've done a lot of research in this field, and understand it greatly. What would your recommendation be to folks out there who haven't done this practice or have been? I get this one all the time when I'm teaching meditation. I really stink at meditation. Yeah, we all do, you know, but we don't, because there is no stinking at meditation. There is just doing it. That's it. That's
Hmm.
it. There's like, I don't know. You might have gotten the Olympic gold medal for meditation. I don't know. Is that one on your list? Did you have that? You walk around. Is it in
Not
the wall? Is it
yet.
on the trophy case? Yeah. Right.
No,
I didn't
not
know it was
yet.
an Olympic
Getting there.
sport, right? Yeah, exactly. So what would your kind of advice or thoughts be to the person who hasn't jumped into meditation yet and has that judgmental aspect? Because I think you I'll let you answer that, and then I'll add on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with anything that we do, especially worthwhile things and especially difficult things, it always starts with a why, right? Mindfulness, everybody's doing it, let's do it. I think that is not reason enough, because meditation practice, if I'm being honest, it's not the easiest. It is hard,
No.
it is difficult. Confronting your own neurotic minds is one of the hardest things we'll ever do. So the why is very important. So what I would encourage people to do is assess their lives and see, how present are you with your loved ones? How are you spending your days? Are you actually enjoying the meal that you have worked so hard to earn money and provide to yourself or your family? Or you're going through your life from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. Are you okay with yourself, the way you're operating your life? Do you like your own company? And when you assess all of those things and you realize maybe something is missing, I don't have a good handle on my mind, I don't understand it, I'm estranged with myself, that place is a good place to start exploring ways to change that, because it doesn't have to be the
Mm,
case. We should not hate our own company, or we shouldn't be going through life just preparing to live versus actually living. So from that
cool.
sort of exploration comes the why. Then you are you have a better, more fertile mind to try to understand what mindfulness is, what it can do for you, what meditation practice is in relation to mindfulness, and how they can potentially be the antidote to all of these problems that you're noticing in your life. then all of the information becomes relevant to you. Otherwise, it's sort of every day new things are coming out as to how we can improve ourselves, how we can get stronger, prettier, more charming. But we always have to start with, what is my problem? How am I trying to solve it? And is mindfulness the answer for me? And I can say, so long as we have the brain and so long as we are struggling with the problem of distraction and having no control over our minds, if you find the right kind of resource, I would almost say universally mindfulness would be a good antidote for us.
That's amazing. That's awesome. So that being said, you just talked about the resources. This would be a great time to plug your fabulous your blog, your newsletter. So Mari, can we throw that up there? There's a QR code, but just tell us about some other resources maybe that you would really recommend for people to dive into.
Yeah, thank you for that kind plug-in. The newsletter, I'll speak a little bit to it.
We're
One
all
of the
about
things,
kindness. We're all about kindness with the plug. Come on, here we go.
yes. Um, One of the things that I found is we don't need to make drastic changes in our lives to see results. It's the little things that we do on a day-to-day basis, the few minutes of contemplation, or um, one thought that you think about that shifts the way you look at your day or the way you look at people around yourself or your problems, that makes the biggest shift. So with this mindfulness, the newsletter, what we do as in me and my husband, we are a team. What we do is on a weekly basis, we send out a mindful minute. And that's exactly what it is. It is a minute or so of time where you look at one quote, one contemplation on the topic, and one exercise to help you think about your day, think about your situation in a more productive manner. And just having it on top of your mind over time, it really becomes the way you are and the way you look at world and the way you deal with problems. So I think that that's a great thing to think about, is resources that take small time, but over time commitment allows for changes to happen.
Yeah, we always call it the aggregate of marginal gains. So as you add up these little tiny pieces, a little after a little after a little, it becomes a lot. And so
Hmm.
I think that's awesome. That's awesome that you had that. I was trying to scan it as you were talking, but I thought it was going to be really rude if I picked up my phone and just like did it as you were talking. So but I'm going to get it from Mari. So I definitely want to log into that and take a look at it. That sounds absolutely amazing. And thank you for all the work that you're doing in this space. I personally know how much has changed my life in terms of being able to regulate my emotions in terms of being able to perform and focus, in terms of being able to tap into the power of noticing, which is a fundamental foundation tool that we teach all the time for our executive leaders and the corporate clients that we have. So I really, truly appreciate the work that you're doing. Obviously, people can find you on the newsletter. They can find you at Pema Solutions. And I know from the clients that you and we worked together with a client that we weren't in the same room at the same time, different presentations, different times. But I know how much they truly appreciated it because we came on after you and they talked about you the entire time. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Yeah, and I think the last thing that I'll say is that mindfulness is a practice. It's not mental magic. Just like mental skills and mental training, there is no such thing as I'm focused, I don't have anxiety, all that stuff. It takes work, and when you do the work works on you. And I think that that's a perfect example of that is this mindfulness practice. Any
Yeah,
last thoughts?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Great thought on your part. I think one thing that I'd love to part with, and I would want to leave everyone with, is, we all have this one life, one mind. We have to have our own back. And what does that look like?
Mm,
Oftentimes we do things that are indulgent, and we think we are serving ourselves, but to have this kind of discernment, what is actually serving me versus not, to make that discernment and commit to doing the hard work to serve yourself, I think is the best thing we can do to make our own lives worthwhile, because it's a pretty amazing thing to be alive and to have this life and to have this mind. So really utilizing it and appreciating it, I think mindfulness is a great way to do that.
Thank you so much, Pema. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. I really appreciate it. So thank you, everybody. We will be back on Monday with our next Limitless Live. We're here every day from 12:30 to 1 Eastern time. If you're in Denver, it's 10:30. I know that because I'm in Denver. That's the only reason I know that. But everybody, thank you so much again, Pema, for taking the time to be here. We really appreciate it. The body has limits, but the mind is limitless. Thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.